So would you like to introduce yourself and how you came to being involved with Chisenhale Dance Space?
Okay, I'm Anna Furse, and I was originally involved with X6. Well, what happened is I was sent by Spare Rib magazine to Oxford to watch a performance by Jackie Lansley, Sally Potter and Rose English called Mounting, probably in 1977. And I wrote the review, and then I wanted to write a piece about ballet from a feminist perspective. I'd been a Royal Ballet trained dancer. And it started off with an interview with Jackie. Actually, it became a cover issue of Spare Rib magazine. And from that, I got involved directly with X6. So I used to do classes, I used to make work. Jackie and I and some other women, Jackie ran a women's performance workshop, which I was part of. We made performances at the Drill Hall and X6. I worked on the magazine quite intensively. So I was quite a sort of, and I edited the magazine at one point. I was quite a kind of staunch, not founder member, but one of the close associates of X6. And then I was invited to be in the Chisenhale Collective. I mean, I was part of the move. We did, we used to literally do sort of breeze block chains to build the walls in cold winters. I mean, we really were hands-on. Phil Jack and Doug Gill put the floor in, we put the walls in. We were very, very proactive. We obviously didn't do the plumbing, but and I was part of the collective who ran it, and I was also rehearsing there. So I had a company called Blood Group, and we used to rehearse there with no heating. So we used to rehearse there and run workshops there before it was even open officially. So I worked there for quite a while and continued with the magazine, although I was working on the magazine at Fergus Early's house, as I remember, not at Chisenhale itself. Because at X6 we used to do the magazine all together because it was pre-digital, so we used to lay it all out before publication. Then I used to go to Camden and typeset it all at midnight. It was like very, very hands-on. And I can't remember how long I stayed at Chisenhale, but the reason I left is I lived way over the other side of town. And the collective took a very, very long time, a lot of time of one's life, and decisions were very slow. And actually, Chris Cheek at the time was becoming very proactive with the council. He was very much not a leader. Yes, he was really. I mean, he was very much on it. So I quit the collective probably in 84, 85. I can't remember, around that time.
Yeah, because I knew that you were involved with X6 and obviously New Dance magazine, because you were really important within that and the sort of New Dance collective. But I didn't realise that your entry point to it was actually through writing, through going to review, which is really interesting.
It was. I mean, I was sort of toying with the idea of journalism at the time. And what had happened to me is I'd been a Royal Ballet trained dancer who then had a crisis of faith and went into theatre and went into university. When I came out of university, I was completely lost. And I went back into dance, actually. And then I was living in San Francisco. And then I came back to London. There was this burgeoning new dance scene. I remember going to see a Rosemary Butcher piece at Serpentine and just being blown away and meeting Jackie and just feeling like there was this radical feminist thinking going on in dance, which even as a ballet dancer, I've been quite radical. I had choreographic prizes from Ashton and Massine because I used to do wacky way out work rather than dolls who woke up in toy shops, which is what my mates used to be doing. So I was always a bit edgy. And I think I sort of found my people. I mean, we really were very, very, very close. We worked extremely hard in very poor conditions. Looking back, terrible conditions at X6, There was no loo, we used to pee in a bucket, It was freezing and beautiful, but we were so dedicated to what we were doing. And there was also a relationship, I'm sure you know this, with the London Filmmakers Co-op and the Musicians Co-ops Collective. So it wasn't just us, there was a kind of group of radical thinking artists in London. We were in each other's lives, we'd go to performances, the same people would be there. It was a bit incestuous, but it was a movement, like all artistic movements, radical movements. It was a few people who really drove it. And I also wrote, at the time I was working with X6, Jan Murray took me on. Jan Murray was running the dance pages of Time Out, and she was the only journalist who was really picking up on new dance. She liked she decided I was a writer, so I used to ghost for her. And so I was doing sort of Time Out writing as well.
Yeah, interesting. That you were involved with the Chisenhale Collective, and you were part of the group of people that were working on the actual building, you know, when you moved in, to get it up to spec and you know, usable. And then from the archive that I found so far, there are a few things that I've seen also that you were up to. So in 1983, I think 83 was the year that the fire escape was installed, and so It was publicly open. So this is from my documents anyway, the first kind of official year.
That makes sense, yes. Because we rehearsed a show called Dirt there, which premiered in 1983, yes.
Yes. So the same year.
It was quite an eventful year, yes.
Yeah, so there were the rehearsals of Dirt, and then a performance with Mary Prestige called Passive Resistance, Crimes of Passion.
That's right, which went to Dartington.
Right, okay. And then some workshops as well, physical theatre, visual theatre workshops, and contact improvisation workshops with Mary. So could you talk about some of the things that you were doing at Chisenhale?
I think if I look back at that time, there were two sort of threads to my practice which became very important in my own teaching, my own actor training work, if you like. And that was contact improvisation, which was just revolutionary for me. I was very interested in exploring a kind of feminist dramaturgy, if you like, and I didn't think it was that at the time. It was just how women think. That's what how women's imagination works. I remember I had a quote from Simone de Beauvoir, which is, "The new woman's just being born. Will her ideational world be different from ours?" So I was very inspired by the idea that if I had a logic, which is kind of crazy, but I had a logic that if gender was conditioned, that women had a kind of a different mental syntax, and I was interested in that syntax, like what was it? I'm still interested in that. What was in our imaginations? So I used to do a lot of workshops on visual imagery and composition and configuration and ideas that came from women's lives and women's imaginations. And sort of along the way somewhere, I combined, I'd also worked with Grotowski. So I had a reflect physical theatre training. I had contact improvisation, and I had these kind of feminist thoughts, and they sort of blended into a methodology eventually that became part of what I taught from and with for a long time. So it was a very seminal period for me. I mean, it was really, I wasn't just teaching it, but I was all over the place. I was teaching in other places in London, but I was also doing a lot in Europe and America. I was freelance teaching workshops quite a lot. And in fact, during that time, I got money from what was then the Greater London Arts, probably, to run a newsletter. I was always into the idea of how we could help each other kind of make things better. And I knew there were lots of us teaching workshops. And it was a sort of, I guess, if I look back, and it was a sort of marketing idea. I created a newsletter. What was it called? Dance About or something. And anyone who was teaching a workshop would let me know their publicity, and I compiled it, and then I got a mailing list together. And so people would get all the workshops in London for the next month or something, listed in one place. Because that's what New Dance magazine didn't do, that because it was quarterly. We couldn't promote things. So I was interested in the idea of people learning about the work that was going on. I can't remember how long I did that for, but I literally used to do that on my typewriter, written by hand. I mean, we did everything Roneo and Letraset. So workshop teaching was a kind of research, actually, is what it was. I think for many of us, it was a promotion of the ideas we cared about. It was also research.
Yeah. The things that you were just talking about, sort of developing this feminist methodology, this feminist language, and in doing that, bringing together composition, image, and politics, and this sort of convergence of those things, is very much what you were doing with Blood Group.
Yeah.
And you mentioned the piece Dirt, which you didn't perform at Chisenhale, but you rehearsed it. Is that right, at Chisenhale?
That's right. We rehearsed at Chisenhale, and then we launched it, as we always did, I think, at the Oval House, and then we always transferred to the ICA. Well, not always, but from then we transferred to the ICA with our work.
And also interesting, your work with collectives or collaborative working seems to have been central to your working practices throughout all of this, and Chisenhale was an extension of that.
It was. I mean, it was, and I was very committed to that. But to be honest, I'm also a very impatient person. And I found the director in me very late. I was suppressing it. I sort of, by nature, I'm probably more of a leader. I believe in collectives politically, but they're quite tough. Democracy takes time. I still really believe in it. My MA is very much about finding collaborative modes that work for people across a lot of differences, but I recognize it's very tough.
Absolutely. But I guess as well at that time, that collective allowed you to learn that. It gave you that support to develop the work that you're doing.
Find out who we were, really to find out who we were and how we functioned and how we ticked. I mean, for me, that era was foundational, was really, really important. I have to say there was another thing going on then, and I don't know if you know about this, which was co-counselling. So I became a co-counsellor because we all did, and which was very helpful and illuminating, but also incredibly annoying, because we'd be in the middle of a session, a class, a workshop, a rehearsal, and someone would say, I need a session. And we'd all have to stop and co-counsel, which was like, I suppose there was a lot of emotional trouble. There was a lot of trauma. And if I look back on it, there was a lot of post-traumatic stress in the group, who'd all come from, very different kind of dance backgrounds that had been very oppressive. And we were all young and we were all trying to find our way. And we all had quite a lot of, emotional issues that we had to work through, that we were dealing with. And we were very close. We were in each other's lives a lot. So, co-counselling was both brilliant and a real no-no for me. Kind of found it in the end too indulgent. I think it was another reason, actually, that I probably left the collective, is because I just felt that we were getting a bit soggy. I felt we were getting a bit self-indulgent.
And the co-counselling continued from X6 through into Chisenhale as well?
Yes, it did. I mean, it wasn't so prevalent, wasn't so noticeable then, but yes, certainly. I was co-counselling. I mean, in fact, Sally Potter was my co-counselling trainer initially. And I still think it's a great system, but I think I found the mixture of the confusion between making work and being in a serious professional situation and having emotional issues. I found that blurring a little problematic.
And the workshops that you were doing at Chisenhale, who were coming to those?
A whole mixture of people on the sort of growth movement side of things, therapy, new therapies, dancers, theatre people, mostly people around, I would say, mostly around therapies, physical therapies and psychological therapies and dance and theatre, I would say. And quite formative. I mean, Kirsty Alexander was around that time. She became the head of London School of Contemporary Dance. There was quite significant, people rose up from that time as well. Interesting era.
And the reason for New Dance magazine is obvious, really. It was a necessary thing to be able to sort of promote and talk about this work and explore ideas. But I think it's quite interesting because you've been very involved with that throughout, and writing even before you're involved with New Dance. Why do you think you had that relationship between writing and theatre and performance and dance?
I think writing and dance for me was probably that I experienced my ballet training as a training in being gagged, being silenced, having no voice. So I think the idea of becoming articulate and being able to communicate that was really, really important to me. So it was a sort of political weapon. Writing became a political tool, political weapon.
Yeah, absolutely. And from the other side of being reviewed for your own work, what was that like at the time?
We were getting reviewed, and the first piece of work we did was called Barricade of Flowers, which Susie Gilmore and I spent about a year making. And that was a sort of deconstruction of Genet's The Maids. And we just followed our guts from the kind of work I'd been doing, the workshops with Jackie and my own research. And Susie was very clever and very sort of risk-taking and dynamic. And we made this piece of work, and we made this piece of work. I suppose I was very motivated by not wanting to make feminist theatre in terms of plays where you reverse roles. That just didn't interest me at all. Barricade did get journalistic attention and reviews, and in Germany we took it, Switzerland we took it. It sort of put the work on the map.
Moving from X6 to Chisenhale, there was an underlying, I guess, idea about what was needed to be done and what wanted to be done, but there were lots of things that were changing. Politically, the climate was changing, or would be changing throughout the 80s, and the location was very different. It wasn't X6, it was a new place. And so what was that like at the beginning? Was it very clear what the objectives of Chisenhale would be or should be, or was there a sort of trying to get to grips with what it could be?
Very interesting question. I mean, maybe other people had clear objectives. I just thought we were trying to carry on the principle of a space for this experimental new movement of work. But what happened at Chisenhale is, of course, an immediate obligation to the community, which was very important. And that changed things, because we didn't do anything like that at X6. There wasn't a kind of living community around there close to it. It was all derelict warehouses, But I think that changed, the idea of being socially significant and having Tower Hamlets kind of invest in us, take us seriously, kind of shifted things. But I can't ever remember sitting down and saying, what is I don't remember a policy statement. I don't remember. There may have been. I don't remember a manifesto or anything. I think there was a lot of assumption, because we just assumed we knew what we wanted, I think, because we all sort of wanted the same thing, which is this flaming light to continue burning, of what we cared about. But of course there would have been policy writing and so on. I just can't remember seeing it. I probably did. I remember going through loads of very boring paperwork to do with Tower Hamlets, that kind of thing. But like I say, Chris Cheek was much more ahead of all that. He was really leading that kind of work.
Yeah, and I guess also fundamentally there was just a need to have a space still, because there wasn't really anywhere else artist-led in that way. So it was kind of, like you say, not really a question. It just had to happen, and then it developed.
Yes, it was really an assumption we all made, that we just had to roll our sleeves up and make it happen. And I wasn't instrumental in finding the place at all. I was much more active in the magazine and in kind of workshops than the actual building. So, if I think I think one of the reasons why I needed to leave too is I don't know if this is true, probably that I didn't understand enough what our drive was and I didn't know what I was holding in my hand and grabbing. It probably felt a bit amorphous to me. Because it was unfolding, and rightly so. It was kind of, we were finding our space, our place. And when I look back on it, it's astounding that we created that space. And a lot of people today, students, don't know that people like me, we collectively did that.
Yeah.
People think that venues just happen, that Arts Council just plonks money into a building and people are appointed. They don't realise that a lot of these ventures grow from people from the inside, make anything, Oval House the same, make things happen. And that it was artist run was fantastic. And remember, we used to do all our own admin as well. We didn't have an administrator. We didn't think of that. So we used to do everything ourselves. Cleaning, toilet cleaning, admin, everything.
I think the thing that you described of not quite feeling like you could grab exactly what it was at that time, I think that's kind of its nature in a way, because it's constantly changing, and even today it's kind of still asking itself, who are we and who are. So it's one of the beauties of it, but also one of the challenges with it.
It's also very strange. There was was it a 25th or something? I remember I was there with Sue McLennan, and there weren't that many of us from the old gang. And we actually felt very alienated. We didn't know anyone, nobody knew who we were. It was like, it's a strange thing, completely rightly that other generations take it on. But I'm always interested in that, the lack of history. People so easily forget or don't know or don't understand the history. But I think it's really important. That was my politics as a feminist as well, to know why we've got to where we've got to. It just doesn't happen. It's not like falls out the sky. Struggle is struggle. People work at it.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's so important.
But also, I think as you get older, it's very interesting having this conversation with you. But as you get older and you look back, you do kind of, Bachelard calls these microfilms. We all have microfilm memories, and we do go back and go, was it like that, or was it like I remember it like this? And you do kind of rewrite history as well as you remember. It's quite important I'm aware of that, not to mythologize my own memories, and to make them accurate, because we edit out in memory. We kind of just I don't know, we remember the kind of the good bits or something, or we remember the bits that were most vivid when there was an awful lot else going on. And there was a lot of, as you can imagine, in a collective of people, we didn't always get on. We had arguments, we disagreed, there was a solidarity, but we were quite annoyed with each other a lot of the time as well, because we knew each other well and we knew our habits. And I was probably very annoyingly assertive or initiative take. I think I probably annoyed people for that, and other people annoyed me for being too passive, and all of that.
Yeah, but also all important tensions to have in making something move forward and also be successful as well. And particularly when you're working from an anti-establishment perspective, because you have to continue to challenge things, otherwise you end up just morphing into something.
Exactly. And that is the strength. I mean, of course, the weakness of Chisenhale is it's broke, but its strength is that it's tried to hold on to its, more or less, to its identity, and not kind of capitulate to the sort of mainstream forces.
So my last question then is, how would you describe what Chisenhale was at that time when you were involved with it?
Mm-hmm. A very, very beautiful space, full of potential, a very inviting space, run by a very diverse collective of individuals who are all at the time on the cusp of our own careers. I think, in fact, that's what was happening. I think we were all looking back before Chisenhale. Everyone was a little bit more enmeshed in a way. And I think that Chisenhale time, 80s, it was the beginning of, I mean, how old was I then? I was 28 or something. It's very young. It's very young. I think we were on the cusp of finding our different career paths, all of us. You could feel that. It was a place of potential. You could feel a lot of potential.
Yeah.
And if you think of it, it was a collective that included theatre people, voice artists, dance artists, musicians. It was already very interdisciplinary. And I think it was no longer a dance space. It called itself a dance space, but actually it was a very interdisciplinary collective. And I think that model is very exciting. And I remember feeling that at the time, that's what made us special. I just felt like I was in this gang of lovely artists who all had different things going. And then there's so many memories, like Chris Cheek. We lost Sinead Jones, who wasn't in the collective, but she worked with Blood Group. And Chris Cheek remembers meeting Sinead through Blood Group, because Blood Group had employed Sinead for Dirt. And and you think of all these kind of crisscrosses, that babies were born, people met, people fell in love, people found each other there. It was a very vibrant space and very vibrant group of people. And I'm just really very proud of it. Very proud of it.
Yeah, it's an incredible thing to have been part of. And yeah, you're right that diversity of people's backgrounds, disciplines, and work is what kind of made it so incredibly exciting, because the potential in that, the sort of possibilities for collaborations and new ways of approaching work and making work, and I think underlying in all that is, you know, like you say, contact improvisation was really important, but improvisation more
Totally.
generally.
Improvisation and somatic dance and release technique and all of those ways of working, of really playing with the body, the non-virtuosic body was very, very, very important.
Yeah, great.
And you know, I'm still close to a lot of those people. I mean, we are still, across the years, you know, there's still a real bond.
Yeah, that's something that's really stood out to me in doing this work, and when I was doing the X6 as well, is just that those bonds, those relationships are just so solid. You know, it just goes to show how important and significant it was, both on a sort of professional development level, but also on a personal level, that whole period of time.
And I think you're helping me understand something about my MA, which I've been running for 20 years, because I've never quite made that connection till this conversation. So I'm very grateful for it, which is, I think I said it early on in our conversation. I now realize that it's been an unconscious model for how collaboration should be contextualized or encouraged, you know. So I always call my MA a laboratory, you know, a kind of space for experiment rather than a course, even though it's been in a university. And I hadn't realized that probably that came through, you know, that Chisenhale was a model for how you get diverse people to work together, how you get diverse people to go in the same direction, you know. How do you say, let's all go this way, even though we're so different?
Yeah.
Because we did work it out, even if we argued and wept in co-counseling. You know, we did achieve, we did get, the magazine did come out, you know, we did, performances did happen, we did things really happened. Gosh, yeah, I hadn't realized how special it was. And of course, for all of us, it was the antithesis of a ballet studio.
Yeah.
Just spatially, in terms of proxemics, you couldn't have a more different environment.
Yeah.
Than a ballet. It's the reverse of a ballet studio. And lots of sitting in circles and working in circles and breaking up space and no mirrors and all of that, so important, you know, for those of us who've been trained in that very, very rigid way. But I think the thing we haven't mentioned as well, which, you know, of course was an influence, although when I met them, it was very much, no, this is English, you know, it's not, we invented new dance. Actually, Judson Church had been doing this before us, you know, and I don't think we pay enough debt to Judson, because that was certainly a model, unconsciously or consciously. You know, the Judson dancers had been doing exactly that in Judson Church in the 60s and 70s. So, you know, we didn't invent the wheel. We reinvented a wheel, but we didn't invent it from zero. But there was a lot of feeling, because postmodern dance had established itself by the time X6 came along. You know, Yvonne was making her films and Steve's contact improvisation had taken off. You know, they were slightly older than us by 10 years. And there was quite a lot of pride, you know, no, we're not doing the American thing. Well, actually, we were. In many ways, we were.
But within a sort of very specific British context, which was...
You said quite importantly too, you know, the era of Thatcher coming into power. I was actually staying at Jackie Lansley's the night Thatcher came into power, you know. I'll never forget waking up in the morning and realizing we had Thatcher in. And it's a bit like when Trump came into power. It's hard to communicate how devastating that was and how everything changed. The world changed almost overnight, you know, and that so interesting that era of early Thatcherism was an era of abundant collective struggle in the arts and culture. You know, there was a lot of collective effort going on, and it was like this. You know, whether it was in housing or the arts, you know, that was where we did the exact opposite of what she was telling us we were. She concentrated the mind in a way, and that was such a significant time, yes, to build our own. And the Americans were doing it in response to Vietnam and so on. But yeah, we were doing it very much in response to Thatcher.
Mm, mm, yeah. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.